We're talking about what is the tool that connects people, and I mentioned cookies, but I think it's stories and cookies are the same thing, that have the same effect. And what that really boils down to is communication. And for a child, it's handing some kind of a sweet, and that's a form of communication. But as we grow up, as we're adults, it's talking to each other, being curious about each other, not judgmental. And I think that's what begins to break things down, and we begin to connect, is through our curiosity of who the other might be. So I'm wondering, so how is it that you get people to tell you their stories? And it's tricky, because sometimes you ask people, you're in a taxi or you're on the street, and you say, and the question we ask in Canada all the time is, so where are you from? And people think, what, you think I'm not from here? But it's a very, very Canadian question, where are you from? And it's not to say you don't belong here, you're from someplace else. But just that it's a way of saying, like, I know you come from someplace else because I come from someplace else. And so I want to know where you're from, because then I'll know more about who you are. And then you'll stop being just another person on the street who looks different from me and maybe comes from a different place. You'll start becoming an individual. And then you get the story and you find out where they're from. And so that's hard to do. And people will resist. They'll say, well, I don't want to tell you my story, or my story is, you're not going to get my story. But then you have to get past that and believe, honestly, I'm really curious. I'm really curious to know who you are and where you come from. How does our identity change as the years go on? And I think that, as kids, we just identify with our family, right? That's our identity, and a bit with our neighborhood, but that's our community. And as I think for me, because I traveled a lot, I began to see myself as a kind of a citizen of the world, and the whole world was sort of my oyster. But in the past years, as I've come back to Canada and lived here full time and not traveled as much, not traveled at all actually, I start to see my own neighborhood again. It's funny, it's not that it's shrinking, it's just that I've started to understand where I live here in Toronto, and then I start to really appreciate home in a kind of a small way and a huge way too, just what home means, that connection with these people. And when I feel connected here in this home, then I can connect with others. But unless you feel rooted someplace, and that's what took me years to understand, I needed to feel rooted in one place. I needed to know that one place was home. And when you have home, then you can move around others. But what I really fear is for those who don't have home, who need home.